Hello and welcome back. I'm Sarah Shulman. I'm the medical director of Reclaim Our Health Together. I started this series as a project with the Resiliency Project that was out of the Brigham and Women's Hospital. And now we are switching gears. And really our intention with this work is to help you embrace the idea that our bodies are here to teach us and help us reclaim our health, help us find freedom, really. And so my intention with all of this is to teach you about tools that can do just that. And so I started this series with the Resiliency Project called What Is, because I feel like there are a lot of holistic practices out there that people really don't know much about. And so we've been recording on all sorts of subjects. So please visit the Facebook page for more information about any holistic practice that you might have. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce Mary Terhune. She has been involved in the healing arts for over 40 years. Journeying from allopathy to homeopathy, body-centered therapeutic massage, and the realm of energy medicine with reiki. She's a Hay House author of a book called Out of the Blue, which I highly recommend, where she recounts her journey into homeopathy after a spontaneous spiritual awakening in the 80s that changed her whole worldview of health and disease. She's a registered nurse. And Mary, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. And today we're going to talk about homeopathy. So welcome, and introduce yourself, however, if I didn't introduce you properly, and also just begin talking about what homeopathy is.
Great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to talk about homeopathic medicine. I'm always excited to do so. I also teach intro to homeopathic medicine classes to people, and I have one coming up in January. You can look on my website, maryterhune.com. So homeopathy, what is it? Well, it's not herbal medicine, just to get that out of the way. They operate on different paradigms. Homeopathic medicine works in the bioenergetic level, and there's not a molecule of substance in it, but it works on the level of data or energetic data. It does not treat diseases. It just looks at the symptom picture of the person and matches the needed remedy to the person with their symptoms, and harmony is restored on a mental, emotional, and physical level, then symptoms disappear. I'm going to talk a little bit about the philosophy and how Hahnemann discovered this law of cure like, cures like, but then I'm really going to get into the meat of it, because when the rubber hits the road, you have to be successful in treating cases. And I'm going to talk about some acute cases that I worked with my family and friends that are quite miraculous. So many people don't know that homeopathic medicine was once part of our healthcare system in the United States. And it was brought here by doctors from Europe back in 1825. And it gained its real popularity because it was great in the prevention and cure of all communicable disease. But it also works for acute diseases and chronic situations. And in these cases I'm going to talk about are acute cases. So it was, and I believe that trauma medicine and homeopathic medicine can work together in our healthcare system, and that we really need both. I always say trauma medicine saved my life, but homeopathic medicine saved my health. And the two of them can work, even though they work in different paradigms, they can work together quite effectively. So effective that I do foresee that nurses are the ones who are particularly positioned to bring this into our healthcare system, working in clinics to, especially for acute events, so that we can so that we can relieve our emergency rooms from so many of these acute cases that can be handled so easily with homeopathy in clinics. And because hospitals are really for trauma care and needed surgeries. So, for example, the nurses can easily treat the first signs of flu or colds or cat scratches or any of these acute problems that they have, and people end up in the emergency room. So what is homeopathy? So it's a system that was developed over 200 years ago by a German physician, Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, and he was a doctor and a chemist, and he spoke 7 different languages. He was known as a genius by his peers. And what people don't know is that there's actually in Washington, D.C., the only monument to a medical doctor is a monument to Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. And it was dedicated by both President McKinley and both houses of Congress. And it was dedicated to him as the health, let me just get the exact thing, that they called him the great medical reformer of the 19th century, the great medical reformer of the 19th century. And this monument is in Scott Circle, about 1.5 miles from the White House. So the main foundational principle of homeopathy is like cures like, which means that a substance that can create symptoms in a healthy person can also cure these symptoms in someone actually suffering from these symptoms. So how did Hahnemann do this? Well, how did he discover this? Well, he became disenchanted with his current medical system at the time, which was basically mercury baths and bloodletting. And he felt there had to be a better way. So he left his practice and started translating medical texts to earn a living. He actually had 11 children. And he came across an article that said that the reason that the bark of the cinchona plant tree, which is grown in South America, the reason that it can cure symptoms of malaria is because the herb is bitter. But he thought, well, there are other herbs that are bitter and they don't cure malaria, symptoms of malaria. So he felt there had to be a different principle at work. And because he was a chemist, he took some of this bark and highly diluted it, broke it down and diluted it, and took quite a bit of it for himself. And he started to experience the symptoms associated with malaria, which are chills and fever and sweating. Of course, when he stopped taking it, this went away. And he realized that this was the law of like cures like that he had read about. It's a like cures like is inherent in our system. It's just part of nature. And then he went on to prove other remedies along with his friends who were doctors. So they proved these remedies on themselves, and these remedies are from plants, minerals, or animal substances. So they proved all these remedies on themselves first before they ever gave it to a sick person. So the beauty of homeopathic medicine, the remedies, the way they're highly diluted, is that they're not toxic, they never expire, they're affordable, they're available. It's sustainable medicine. They don't poison our waterways, and they don't interact with material drugs. They're used in all acute and chronic states, all flus, all colds. And it's very interesting as to why was it removed from our medical system. You know, it was once taught in our hospitals. It was taught in our medical schools. It was used by the doctors right here in Boston. And it was very popular. But what happened was the Rockefeller families decided that they didn't want the competition with their synthetic petrochemical drugs, so they had it removed from the system. And what's even more curious is that the senior Rockefeller had 2 homeopathic physicians that he used for himself and his family, but it was Rockefeller Jr. that didn't want the competition, so he went about to remove it from the system, and that's what happened. And now it's time to bring it back into the system because we need it. Essentially, it's because we need it. And it's, as I say, it's available, it's affordable, it's historically effective. So I want to speak about some cases in my life that I've used to help my family and friends. And one of them was a friend of mine whose cat scratched her arm. And she called me up on the phone and said that she was going to go on her 3rd round of antibiotics, and nothing has touched this problem. So I went to see her, and her arm was just absolutely red and inflamed and painful. It was just an absolute mess. Because I know homeopathy, I went to school for it. I knew that the symptom picture of that would be the remedy ledum, which is actually made from rhododendron plant. And so I gave her a high potency of it in water. And I stayed with her for a little while to see how it would work. And within a half hour, she said the pain was gone. You could see that the redness started to recede. And so I gave her a bottle with the remedy in it and told her how to redose herself. And by the end of the first day, half of the redness was gone. By the end of the second day, it was almost totally gone. And by the end of the third day, it was completely gone. So,
Wow.
of course, she took less and less remedy as she needed it. So, and cat scratches are quite a common thing, and they can really, you can have so much infection from it, and it's a real problem. I had another friend of mine who had called me up, and she said she had this terrible case of poison ivy on her arm, and nothing that she used, no medicine that she used or took touched it, and that she was really itching and really uncomfortable and in agony. And so she came to see me, and her arm was absolutely, I mean, from the beginning of it all the way up, it was just inflamed and it was oozing this sticky yellow substance, and she was in so much pain and agony and itching and uncomfortable. And of course, I knew the remedy picture for that would be graphites. So I gave her a high potency of graphites, and of course, I stayed with her for a while, for about a half hour, and the itching went away.
Wow.
And the pain of the arm started to recede. So I gave her the bottle of the remedy, told her how to take it, and she took it every couple of hours. And by the end of the day, her arm was 50% better.
Wow.
By the second day, it was almost all gone, and by the third day, it was completely gone. So this is the power of homeopathic medicine and why we need it back in our healthcare system. You know, when I first started my class with homeopathy, which was over 20 years ago now. I'm now 78, so I was in my late 50s when I went back to school to learn it. And at that time, I suffered from a lot of recurrent colds and bronchitis every single year. And I would always end up on antibiotics. Then I started taking homeopathy, and it completely cleared this tendency towards getting colds and bronchitis. And I haven't had it since. That was over 20 years ago. And I haven't had to take an antibiotic for the past 20 years. Wow. So anytime I get a little hint of a little, symptoms of a cold, I'll just take the needed remedy and that will disappear. And it works. And it's not the remedy itself actually that cures you, but it is the remedy acts as a catalyst for the system to heal itself. So you could say it's consciousness-based medicine, and it works with the vital force of the body, which informs the entire body and all the cells in the body. And it's quite miraculous. I had another case with my daughter who she was visiting me with her husband, and they decided to go out to dinner with some friends. And about an hour later, I hear my daughter pounding on the door to open the door. So I run down, open up the door. She falls through the door, but she's bent over in pain. Her face is blue and gray, and it just looked awful. I thought, oh my God, do I need to call an ambulance? And she said, I think I have food poisoning. So she ran to the bathroom, and I was in my first year of homeopathy school, but I had studied the remedy, one of the main remedies for food poisoning. And it was called arsenicum, made from arsenic. And I made up a bottle and I handed it through the bathroom door, and I said, take a dose of this, about a tablespoon. Within 10 minutes, she came out of the bathroom. She had no more pain. Her face was a completely normal color. And she said, I feel fine. Well, I want to tell you, my first year experiencing that, I was shocked. I went, oh my God, this stuff actually works, And later she found out, because her friend had shared the same meal with her, that her friend actually suffered from food poisoning for the next 5 days.
Wow.
She didn't have homeopathic medicine to help her.
Wow.
So these are dramatic cases. I mean, and it just shows the power. Even if you can't wrap your mind around how does this work, it does work. I had another case that was a friend of mine who we were going to be giving a talk at an event, and we were going to be giving it the next day. And she said that she didn't feel well. She had a terrible headache because she was diagnosed with a concussion. She had actually fallen 2 weeks prior, hit her head. She went to the emergency room. Yes, you have a concussion, and take, Tylenol and ibuprofen or whatever it was. And she still had this headache and nothing really touched it. And I said to her, well, I have some homeopathic remedies, and I know the two that I would give you. Are you interested? And she said, sure. So I gave her high potency of nat sulf and arnica, one of each. And she took it that night, and I didn't see her till the next morning. The very next morning that I saw her, her energy had completely changed. She no longer had a headache. Her eyes were bright. And she said, I'm perfectly fine. It's amazing, that I feel so well. I don't have a headache anymore. And in fact, I slept better than I've slept in weeks. So you can see where, just using it for acute events to prevent them from becoming chronic events in people's lives is so important, and how powerful it is.
Yeah.
And even if you don't agree with it, it does work. And even though we have these two different paradigms, trauma medicine and homeopathic medicine, you can use both. And homeopathic medicine does not interact with drugs. And in fact, it can even spare you from having to take drugs, especially if you're very sensitive like me to side effects. So that's what really got me into homeopathic medicine, is that I am very sensitive and I can't take drugs. They make me quite sick. So
those are amazing stories. Thank you.
Stories, yeah. And this is why I feel nurses are the ones who really could bring this to the clinics and to the acute clinics, so that people don't end up in emergency rooms with the beginning of a flu or beginning of a cold or an acute problem, or with, with cat scratch infections or other things, or, terrible cases of poison ivy, because emergency rooms aren't meant for this. And trauma medicine isn't meant for that. Homeopathic medicine is meant for this. And it, as I say, we once had thousands of homeopathic physicians in the United States and homeopathic hospitals. And, you can easily, I used to teach mothers at a natural health market. I used to teach them just a few remedies for acute problems like colds and flus and, bee stings and that sort of thing. And I would teach them to this, and they had their own little kits that they had at home so that they could use this themselves. And we need to empower, and it's quite safe. There's no side effects. It's safe for infants. It's safe in pregnancy. It's safe for all of these cases.
Yeah. I mean, I did that with my kids. I had my own kid. I studied a little bit in medical school about homeopathy, and I had my own kit and my little book that I would refer to. And so tell us a little bit about your class that you're teaching, because I know you're teaching.
Yes, I do teach. I began homeopathy quite late in my years. I was in my late 50s, and so I couldn't start a practice back then, especially with my family obligations. And so I decided to teach classes to the public, because the public doesn't know about it. And we've forgotten our history of homeopathic medicine. So I teach classes. I teach intro to homeopathic medicine classes. The next one will be in January. And I teach a Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 3 each day. And it's open to the public. It's open to anyone who doesn't know anything about homeopathy, or if you've used homeopathy. And I give a lot more background of its history. And then, of course, I go into remedies that are used in acute cases, for the little problems that we have every day that we don't want them to become big problems.
Right.
So, and I teach people how to make up that remedy in a water bottle. How do you put it in water, and how do you dose yourself with it? As I say, it's safe. And even if you're taking drugs, it won't interfere with those. And then you have something, you can use for yourself. And when I would teach these classes to mothers, I was in a small town and I would often run into them on the sidewalk walking, and they would say, wow, my child just had these cold problems and she would develop these symptoms. And I matched the symptoms of the cold to the remedy and I gave it to her and she was fine, completely fine the next day. So these sorts of things. And then I actually I had to have some business cards made up. And so I went to a local place, pick up my business cards. And I walked in and she said, aren't you a homeopath? And I go, yes. And she goes, well, I took your class. And now everybody who works here, they have been out with colds or flus because I taught them how to match their symptoms and they would take the needed remedy and they would be fine. And so none of us missed work. So you can see, with these acute situations, how easily we can relieve our hospitals and our medical system so that it can do its work in the needed trauma medicine and needed surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to be in an argument with each other. I mean, yes, people may take less drugs, but people are always going to need drugs in one form or the other. Or some people will just need them or are not interested in taking homeopathy. But you can see how it can be a tremendous benefit for suffering humanity and who needs, all the help they can get with their health and to help be proactive in their own health. Of course, it's important to eat the right food and to exercise and all of that. That all goes together. It's really a holistic plan and approach to your whole health needs. So
Awesome. Thank you. Well, so I know enough about homeopathy to know that there's like the acute thing. So to have a kid at home for a parent or, for anybody, I mean, every household should own a kit and be able to, and have a book to refer to and be able to experiment with it. But then there's the possibility of like having a chronic issue and visiting a homeopath for that. Like, can you describe that a little bit? Like,
well, that's how I got into homeopathy actually, because I suffered from Hashimoto's over 20 years ago. And I tried taking the medicine and it made me so sick. I thought I've got to find something else. And I happened to mention this to a friend of mine at work. And she said, well, then you're going to need homeopathy. And I'm like, what's homeopathy? And so she gave me a flyer and I called up, and it happened to be a nurse homeopath in the Cambridge area that I went to. And she had me fill out a bunch of forms beforehand to answer a lot of questions. And I went to see her and I was interviewed for about an hour and a half. And she asked many different questions, like that no one else ever asked me, like, what do people complain about in you? What do you have any recurrent dreams? And so it was along with my other health history, of course. And I didn't realize that was part of the symptom picture of a particular remedy you might need. And she had me fill out a timeline of any never well since events that I had in my life. In other words, never well since your dog died, never well since you got a divorce, never well since you got married, never well since you had to move. Any of these never well since events in your life, to make a timeline from in utero until now, and what your reactions were to it. Because homeopathy treats the whole person, the mind, emotions, and the physicals. It doesn't treat diseases, it treats the person who's suffering from a disharmony on an energetic consciousness-based level. And it restores that. It helps to restore it as a catalyst to your system. And then your vital force actually does all the work. So it's innate within us. And so it's very interesting. And we immediately found the remedy. And when I took the remedy, I had quite an experience of like cures like. I know it sounds quite amazing, but when it happened to me, it just made so much sense. And it propelled me onto this path of homeopathic medicine. My experience, you want me to tell you what experience I had?
Yeah, sure.
It's quite mystical almost. It is quite mystical. I took the remedy, I put it in my mouth. I was standing at the sink and my whole consciousness went out into the void, and I saw this twinkling little light, and I realized that's where my energy was stuck in its consciousness. And then I saw another twinkling little light, and I thought, oh, that's the remedy. And when they came together, it kind of exploded into this release of consciousness, you could say. And I went back into my body, and I thought, oh my God, that's how it works. It works on the level of consciousness. And even though consciousness may not be recognized by the biological model, it is by the bioenergetic model. And even at MIT, they're looking at consciousness as another state of matter. And certainly, your neuroscientists are looking at consciousness. So it's a consciousness-based system of medicine. And as soon as that happened to me, I went, oh my gosh, I really need to study this. And that's when I went back to school to study it. And it had a profound effect on me. It released a lot of emotional, mental traumas in my life. And physically, I started getting better physically, so that my thyroid was restored. And so I didn't have to take any drugs for it. Instead, I took a little supplement for the thyroid, and to this day, this has been this way. I haven't had to take drugs for it in that way. I take a little bit of thyroid hormone, but so little that even when I forget to take it for a week, it has no effect. In fact, I probably don't even have to. And then, to watch your diet and to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
There are many ways of, helping people in recovery. And as I say, it cured me of my chronic bronchitis and tendency to colds. And now that doesn't happen anymore.
Well, so I've been fortunate to have you helping me with my issues, and I'm a total believer. And so we're going to do another session on my story and further this conversation. But I'm so thrilled. We're trying to keep these to like half an hour so that people can really get the gist of what homeopathy is, and you just filled us in so nicely. So thank you so much, Mary.
You're welcome.
We will post below all the information about Mary's courses, which are amazing, and I totally recommend anybody watching this to see if you can do it. She is only doing it in person, so the next one is going to be in January in West
Roxbury, yeah, Massachusetts, obviously.
Massachusetts. So, but in the future, come to one of them, because it's really worth learning about this amazing, amazing holistic practice that we can all have in our lives so easily.
Bring your questions. You can be skeptical. It doesn't matter. Try it yourself. If it works, it works. You'll see that it works, and go on for that. I just want to show you a copy of the book, so people, if they want to, it was published by Hay House, and if you want to, this is what it looks like. So you know what you're getting. And yeah, thank you so much. And it's delightful.
Thank you. Well, so thank you all for tuning in, and we are so appreciative of the community that we're building. We hope that the information we're imparting about these amazing holistic health practices can help you in your journey. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Sending you all love.